Hello there. Whoa. It is pumpkin time today. Now, over the last couple years on this channel, it has become somewhat of a tradition that each time fall rolls around, we make a different version of a pumpkin spice latte. And unfortunately, in past years, these versions have started to get a little bit ridiculous, if I may say so myself. So, when thinking about this year's PSL, I decided we would go back to basics. We would just make a straight up, delicious, easy to make pumpkin spice latte. Very excited about today. We are going to talk through this entire recipe, including our whipped cream. And while I am going to go over all of the amounts and portions of everything to making both the syrup and the latte, if you want to find the full written recipe, which I often find a little bit more useful, you can go to morgandrinkscoffee.com to find that. Regardless, let us begin our PSL extravaganza. Tray time, everyone. Now, first things first, before we begin our syrup making, let me talk about two helpful factoids slash hints. Don't really know what word I was going for there. First things first is going to be the actual inclusion of pumpkin in our pumpkin spice latte. This seems to stir up a little bit of controversy every time I actually put pumpkin in a pumpkin spice latte, but I am one of those people that think it is kind of delicious with coffee. However, I fully respect if you don't necessarily like it and you prefer just the more spiced profile of a pumpkin spice syrup. So today's recipe, I will specify how you can include pumpkin and also how you cannot. So we'll have it both ways. Everyone be calm and normal and cool and collected. Now, second thing, you can use either whole spices that you're gonna grind fresh prior to this recipe, or you can use pre-ground spices. You are gonna have a better result if you use whole fresh spices. However, you're gonna have a nice result either way, so it's not a huge thing. However, if you are going the route of grinding your own spices, I would recommend toasting them off lightly before you grind them. Just put them dry in a saucepan on high for like a couple minutes until you get really nice fragrances and aromatics coming off of them. Take them off the heat and then do your usual grinding technique that you would otherwise. This adds a nice extra layer. I did this to our spices we're using today. If you're using regular ground spices, ignore that and we'll just continue. Now, as far as the spices we are actually using, I tend to go pretty spice heavy in my pumpkin spice lattes. We have 6 spices here. Allow me to show them to you. We are going to be using cloves, allspice, cardamom or cardamom seeds, ginger, cinnamon, and some black pepper. At its best, I think a pumpkin spiced syrup should be spice forward and also pretty pungent to cut through the addition of milk and coffee. So that's what we're making. Let me go get our ground spices and we'll begin.
I want to give a huge thank you to Fellow for sponsoring today's video, and oh boy, am I excited about what we're about to talk about. This is the Aiden, a brewer from Fellow that has taken over our home coffee setup for a few reasons. First of all, the versatility of brewing amounts. The Aiden comes with 2 different basket sizes, making it capable of brewing anything from a single cup of coffee to 10. Both of them use Melita filters, by the way. Secondly, the amount of customization you can achieve through the LCD screen interface is fantastic and is only going to continue to grow as brewing control through their app rolls out in the near future. You can keep it simple with an instant brew, use guided brewing presets, build an entire custom profile down to the bloom and pulses, or schedule your brewing schedule in advance. You can find all the classic hallmarks of Fellow sleek design in the Aiden's profile, the carafe, and the tactile feel of the brewer. I had the opportunity to try out the Aiden at the beginning of the year at the Chicago SCA Expo, and I can now confirm after weeks of having it on our counter that it is an all-around beast of a coffee brewer. To learn more about the Aiden, head over to fellowproducts.com, and thank you again to Fellow for sponsoring today's video.
Okay, so the core of our pumpkin spice latte is of course our pumpkin spice syrup that we can then save and use over the course of several weeks or put on other things one might put syrup in. We're gonna make a batch that I find lasts about a week and a half to 2 weeks. You can size this batch up or down as you prefer, and again, if you want those exact measurements, you go to morgandrinkscoffee.com. However, we're gonna be using about 60 grams of pumpkin puree. Make sure when you are purchasing this, you are buying just the pumpkin puree rather than pumpkin pie filling, which is already gonna be sweetened and spiced additionally. We are gonna be using 200 grams of dark brown sugar, 100 mils of water, and then our lovely array of spices. Now, as for the amounts of spices, I am using 2 grams of ginger, 2 grams of cinnamon, 2 grams of cardamom, 2 grams of allspice, and then 1 gram of cloves and 1 gram of black pepper. That keeps the amounts pretty easy to track. 2 grams of most of the things, and then 1 gram of the very pungent things. You will need a heat source of some type. I'm using my very sad single burner that I am soon to replace. You will need a saucepan, and you'll also need a spoon. First things first, let's take our burner to a medium-high heat. We're gonna add our brown sugar, we're gonna add our water, and then here is where you would add your pumpkin puree if you are going that route. If you are not, simply omit it from this recipe. These amounts of spices plus this amount of sugar will turn into a really, really nice rich syrup on its own. However, with the addition of the pumpkin, it loosens up the syrup a little bit more and it tastes really nice. If you've never had a pumpkin spice latte with actual pumpkin in it, I would encourage you to give it a try. However, if you know that you are not a pumpkin fan, I will not begrudge you anything. As our saucepan heats up, simply gonna stir everything together as that brown sugar begins to dissolve into the water. Once everything has dissolved nicely and you're starting to feel a little bit of heat come off this syrup, it's time to simply add all of your spices. We are going to be passing this entire syrup through a cheesecloth before we store it, so don't worry if you have some ground spices that are a bit larger, or perhaps if this looks like a lot of powder. A lot of those really large pieces of spices that might impede the actual drinking experience are going to be removed after we infuse them into the syrup. Oh, it just smells lovely over here. Nice and easy. Everything is getting to marry each other in the pan. I'm gonna bring this to a very low simmer as we cook off some of that sort of raw pumpkin flavor. I'm gonna let it simmer for about 5 minutes, not a super long time. Then we're gonna take it off the heat and we'll strain it. So I will see you soon. Okay, our syrup is just about done over here. For our next step, we're gonna put it into a container to cool, and then you can either store it in that container in your fridge, or if you wanna transfer to a smaller bottle or something, that works as well. I find I make very large messes when I try to pour directly into my bottle, so we're gonna do kind of a 2-step process here. To strain out a large majority of those larger spices and any of that ground powder that's gonna provide some grit in our syrup, I'm gonna use a fine sieve along with a cheesecloth that I'm gonna pour the syrup through. We made it to the other side, a little bit of mess, but no major harm. Now, I'm gonna let this completely cool before I transfer it to my syrup bottle. This syrup will usually keep, well, for a good while. I usually like to make my syrups in small batches, and I'll keep them for about 2 weeks before really keeping an eye on them. Ensuring that you have a nice sterilized bottle is gonna be key here. So we'll allow this to cool, and I'll be right back. We now have a bottle of liquid gold. The syrup is rich and delicious and molassesy and very spicy and a bit pumpkin forward. You can put this on anything, but today we're putting this in a latte, and because we are going all out with the traditional pumpkin spice latte, we are also going to make some whipped cream for our decadent treat. So let's do that real fast. We have a bowl, heavy whipping cream, powdered sugar to taste, and just a little bit of vanilla extract. We will now whisk vigorously, and I'm very sorry for the noise. Let's assemble. For this appropriately pumpkin spice latte, we now have our pumpkin spice syrup. We have our vanilla whipped cream. I'm going to use a little bit of cinnamon as garnish. You will need a milk of choice, whole milk, delicious. Oat milk, also delicious. A glass and some espresso. Let's go get our espresso. Your preferred syrup amount is very much going to be up to your choice. I find for about an 8-ounce drink, which is roughly 250 mils, maybe a little bit less, I tend to like to add about 25 mils of syrup. My rule of thumb, especially for these more decadent drinks, is that my amount of syrup is never really more than 10% of the total drink volume. You can adjust from there, but it's a nice starting point. Double shot of espresso. Quick stir, of course. You can make this drink iced if you'd like. I'd like it hot. Let's steam our milk. And that is a very tasty pumpkin spice latte. I would like to enjoy firsthand though. I'm a very happy camper right now. Now, if you are someone who wants to go the full 9 yards, as you will, I'm gonna put a little bit of our whipped cream on top. Just a nice little addition to the warm, comforting flavors that we have going on here. And finally, a little sprinkle of cinnamon. This is good. This is very good. For all the years that I have made ridiculous pumpkin spice lattes, sometimes we do really just have to go back to basics. Now, once more, if you want the full amounts and written directions to this recipe, you can go to morgandrinkscoffee.com, where it will be the most current of all the recipes. If you click over to the menu tab, you can also always find it there. This has been fun. This has been probably the least stressful pumpkin spice latte video I have made in like 3 years. So I'm having a great time and I'm looking forward to finishing this. In the meantime, my name is Morgan and you can find me here on YouTube plus Shorts or on Instagram or TikTok almost every single day. This was a blast. I hope this was fun for all of you who partake in the PSL season. I'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.